what DDoSes are and how they work. Are there any questions so far? Nope? Okay. Well, I guess I will talk on countermeasures then. So the first countermeasure is black holing or null routing. It's quick, it's easy, it's effective. You just send all of the packets going to a certain destination to the equivalent of dev null. You just drop them. You don't look at them, you don't process them, you don't try to find out any information about them, you just get rid of them. And it's quick and easy, but the problem is it cuts off your connectivity. Anything coming in, if your machine is entirely black holed, then no traffic will get to it, whether it's attack traffic or legitimate traffic. And this is usually the first line of defense, the oh crap, what do we do line of defense, which is usually followed up with you can change your IP address, move your machine to a different address on the internet, and maybe the attack will stop. And unfortunately, it almost never does. As soon as the attacker notices that your DNS has changed, they will just change the IP that they're going after, and you get hit again, and your ISP really doesn't like you. Routers can also be used to block attack packets. You can use the access control lists on them to drop any matching traffic coming through as opposed to routing it. This is generally how the black holing is done. It's hard to tell legitimate traffic from attack traffic if the attack is good. If it's a SYN flood, you can usually pick it up. If it's an ICMP flood, you can usually pick it up. But if somebody is launching a denial of service attack against your web server by repeatedly getting random pages that they've found on your site before, there's no way of being able to tell if it's coming from a randomized address what is legitimate and what is not. So this is another method that is used as an emergency line of defense. You use it when you have no other options and you need to do something and figure out what is going on and try to come up with a better solution. You can also use firewalls for this. Same problems as black holing with routers. It's hard to distinguish attack traffic from legitimate traffic. And especially in the case of DDoSes such as SYN floods, the moment you have a ton of small packets moving through a firewall, your firewall performance is going to go to hell. It sucks. They can't deal with small packets very well at all. And if the firewall is a single point of failure, then you're kind of screwed, because if your firewall fails, everything behind it is unreachable. So a denial of service attack against your server that's behind a firewall will also function as a denial of service attack on the firewall itself. And if that happens, you get cut off, and there's not much you can do about it. IPSs, intrusion prevention systems, they're basically useless against denial of service attacks. If you've got a tap and you're watching it with an IPS, the IPS will definitely notice that it's a denial of service attack. What can it do? Generally not much. One of the main things that they can do is update ACLs on routers, but we've already covered that. It just doesn't work very well. They make managers feel better, but they really don't do anything useful against stopping one of these attacks. They might be able to page you and tell you what's going on, but they can't stop it. What's supposed to stop it are DDoS mitigation devices, which are essentially firewalls that are tuned to be able to take DDoS attacks and stop them. And they're designed to handle high bandwidth, lots of packets, and if there's an emergency failover, they will generally fail open, which means if the device completely dies, then packets will still be able to get bridged through the device and it won't get cut off from the network, or everything behind it won't get cut off from the network. And the bad thing about these devices, you might think, hey, these are made exactly for this purpose, this is great. They are completely and totally useless unless they're further upstream from you. So if the incoming pipe to your data center is this big, and then the pipe to your machine is this big, and you're getting this much attack traffic, then if it's blocked past the data center on your side, it's going to overflow your pipe. If it's blocked at the data center, it's not going to overflow theirs. So these are really meant to be used in data centers by ISPs or by backbone providers, and they're not always there, they're not always working, and the ones that do exist don't necessarily work very well. So if you want to go out and spend $50,000, $100,000 on a DDoS mitigation device thinking it's going to completely protect you, make sure you have an idea of how much bandwidth you have versus how much bandwidth a DDoSer can get you with. I've been hit with over 60 megabits before, which might not sound like, compared to the DDoS attacks in the news, like against Amazon or eBay or whoever, 60 megabits might not be that much, but it's still a lot of traffic. And it's, especially if you've got a 2.5 megabit line at a colo, it's not going to help you on your side. So that's one thing to consider before putting down a whole lot of money on these devices. Contacting your ISP. It's what you're supposed to do. It's supposed to be effective. They're the business that handles this sort of stuff. Supposedly they have people with a level of technical competence that can identify and put an end to these attacks. And I'm not going to name any names of any particular companies, no names, but there are a number of companies that I've had dealings with that haven't been very helpful or friendly. And even if you're paying a good amount of money, for example, I pay what's considered very cheap, $100 a month for a colo facility right now, a server co-located, just a little 1U machine, $100. That's nothing. And as a result, they don't really care. So your ISP might not be helpful at all, might not even forgive you for being DDoSed. The best that they will generally do, unless you are a customer that is paying a lot of money, you are one of their larger customers, and they don't want to lose you, they'll offer to null route your IP, give you a new IP, and say, basically, if this happens again, we're going to have to talk. This has happened to me on a number of different ISPs, which, again, I am not going to mention. The first thing that I was always told was that all they could do, because of technical limitations on their side, is black hole traffic going to me, and that's not useful. So this option might not be the best one. The best one, I really hate saying this, but threatening to break somebody's fingers is a very good deterrent. The last time I was hit by a DDoS attack, it was because there was one user on my system that was on IRC and pissed somebody off, and this guy decided to DDoS 3 major servers, mine and 2 others. And as a result, some of the admins of one of the other servers got his buddies and came up with a short list of people who might be responsible for the DDoS attack, visited person number 1, and he had no idea what was going on, and he was like, I don't know. They went to visit person number 2. Person number 2 fled. He knew what was going on, and he got the hell out of there fast. So it was pretty obvious that he was responsible, and fortunately the DDoS attack stopped. I really don't like this, but it's an illustration of the fact that this is not a technical problem, unfortunately. It's a social problem, and you have to come up with some sort of way to deal with these people that is not reliant on the technology whatsoever. And again, I really don't advocate violence. Don't do it. Especially don't blame it on me. But what? Disclaimer. Yeah, disclaimer. Yeah, don't do it. But unfortunately, it seems to be the most effective way of stopping these attacks. So, speaking of that guy that fled, hopefully he's learned his lesson. If anybody wants to give him a call right now, just remind him that DDoSing isn't good. And again, social problem, social solution. Somebody acts out of line, there needs to be some sort of self-policing in the group. And whereas most people don't want to do it, some people do. This might be considered, oh, that's horrible. You're dropping somebody's docs, you're showing off. Why are you doing that? This guy's not going to do it again. That's all there is to it. I hope he's learned his lesson, and it's really sad that he had to do it in the first place. But what can you do? Okay, so the basic response process to a DDoS. The first thing you need to do is identify that an attack is happening. Generally, you do this by noticing that all of a sudden your net connection's not working, or you can't get to your server, or something's wrong. It's pretty obvious. The best way of identifying what's happening is looking at a traffic capture. And if your traffic capture shows what is obviously attack traffic, or shows that you're getting too many packets and your network analyzer can't show it, it's a pretty good indication that you're being DDoSed. There were a lot of times where, when I was living at the Hacker Halfway House and we were getting DDoSed, the moment the network went down, we would immediately run to a computer and go into defensive mode. And sometimes it was just a network outage, and we were like, okay, this is all right. We'll just wait a little bit. It'll come back. It's cool. And sometimes when we noticed attack traffic coming in, we were immediately on the phone with as many ISPs as possible. And the first one is always your own. You contact your upstream provider, and you ask for temporary black holing or some other solution that they can provide that they volunteer. The main thing you need to do is block the attack at the ISP as opposed to hitting the last mile pipe to your house. Because if the attack makes it that far, even if you've got DSL or cable that's 5 or 7 megabits, with the number of zombies that you can get on the internet by these automated scan and infect programs, that's pretty trivial. And upload is generally limited, especially compared to download speed, but this doesn't matter if you have 10 or 50 or 100 or 1,000 bots. It really doesn't. You will always have less bandwidth than the attacker. So you need your ISP to do something about it, and you need to get somebody at the ISP that actually knows what's going on. One of the ISPs, the one that I currently have at home, Comcast, cable modem, completely and totally useless. I've called their tech support when I've been getting DDoSed, and they had no idea what the hell I was talking about. And they told me first to reboot my computer, and then go to the control panel, click on network properties, do you have an IP address assigned? And it's obvious that they're reading from a script and they have no idea what's going on. And the moment I say, hi, I work in computer security for a living, I know what I'm talking about, can you transfer me to somebody who knows what they're talking about? They usually just hang up on you. Right? They don't like it, and I still don't know a good way of getting to talk to somebody at Comcast that has any sort of clue what the hell they're talking about. Go back to the violence. No. I don't know what to do. And at other ISPs, before when I was on Speakeasy, they were better about it. My colo that I'm at now, they're good about it. It really comes down to picking an ISP that can demonstrate that they have a clue of what they're talking about and that they're willing to talk to you. And the only way to do this really is through trial and error. And it sucks, again, but if you figure out ISPs that are useful with their tech support, that will be a lot more valuable than the extra $5 or $10 or $20 a month that it costs to get that ISP. Yes?
Trial and error, ask a bunch of your buddies, similar things. Hopefully someone else has found a good way.
Yeah, exactly. Ask around. DSL reports and the like often tell you about the quality of somebody's tech support and whether they are actually useful or not, but a lot of it is trial and error, and I've done a lot of the trial and a lot of the error, unfortunately. So once you've got in touch with your ISP and they've indicated that they are willing to work with you, you need to provide them with logs, and it also helps to start contacting the providers of the attackers yourself. And if there's any way that you can get an automated script that will run through, do an IP lookup, find out who is responsible for that IP, and fire off an email with a log of the attack, you're good. Unfortunately, this doesn't work so well, even if it is automated, and a lot of ISPs just don't care. If Comcast gets an email saying, hi, one of your cable modem users appears to have An infected machine